Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Free Food for Millionaires, which is Min Jin Lee's debut novel. It's her first book, and she was 37 when she sold this manuscript in 2006. And then it came out in 2007. The prologue to this book kind of details Min Jin Lee's journey of going through a chronic illness, quitting her legal job, like being a lawyer, and deciding to write full time, what it was like to raise her child in New York with her husband while also trying to be a writer. It was pretty inspiring to hear it from her point of view. One thing that I really like about Pachinko is how real the characters feel. And after I finished that book, at the end of Pachinko, Min Jin Lee talks about how she does her research process. And it was interesting because in the foreword to this, she also talks about the importance of research. Basically, one of the characters in Free Food for Millionaires is like an MBA student and kind of a douchebag. His name is Ted. And she talks about how when she wanted to learn more about her character, Ted Kim, the investment banker, I interviewed several men who went to Harvard Business School. One of them told me that I should pretend to apply. And then she spent a day like going through the interviews and sitting in on a class. And she says in the foreword, "That day changed me because I started to value research, not for the details or the velvet scraps of dialogue, but for the feelings that new information made me have. Ted is not good, but research allowed me to recognize his vulnerabilities, which allowed me to love Ted in his totality." So I think that thread of how she does her research and how she loves to research is really interesting because that was one of the first things that I think really drew me to Pachinko. But anyway, for Free Food for Millionaires, let me give you a little bit of a snapshot what it's about and then my thoughts. So this is a pretty long novel, but you're basically following the story of Casey Han. She has just graduated from Princeton and she's trying to figure out her life in New York City. Essentially, she has a few different paths in front of her. She could go to law school, she could work on the floor of like a trading house at a bank, and she does do that for a bit. It's really stressful. She comes from a working class family. Her parents own a laundromat in Queens. They're Korean immigrants to the US. And this novel follows her story, but also looks into a couple of key people in Casey's life, and also her romantic relationships as well as her family. Kind of slice of life with a lot of reflections thrown in. The genre and the style felt very comforting to me. It actually really reminded me of my favorite book, which is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, in the way it recounts like minor details or kind of everyday happenings, but also the big events that happen to a young person and all of us really as we're trying to chart our way through life, and knits it together into this kind of really close feeling that I as a reader had with the protagonist. And I really liked Casey as a protagonist. She's full of flaws, makes mistakes, but she's also very logical, like has a good head on her shoulders. And I think at the end of the day, like really wants to do what she wants to do, though she is not insusceptible to the forces of society and the pressures from her family and also the constraints of being a woman at this time. This takes place in like the 90s, I think. You definitely feel that she is someone who is ambitious and is brave, fearless, and even though she makes missteps here and there, she is just a character that's very likable, I think, because she is trying to move forward and do the right thing, even though, like the right thing for herself, even though it's not always clear what that might be. There's no capital P plot in the sense of a really action-driven, plot-forward thing happening here. It's really more like little vignettes of little chapters of her life right after college and the struggles she goes through. And I feel like Casey is like a really well-defined character. I can think of a lot of facts that I know about her and a lot of components to her personality, which I feel like is not always the case with characters in the books that I read. She is kind of grappling with the role of religion. She doesn't feel religious, but every day she reads a chapter of the Bible. She's a very like routine-oriented person, although she can be flaky. and not reliable. She loves clothes. She has a really bad spending habit, so she's obsessed with like the finer things in life. One of the most memorable lines that she says early on in the book is that she read somewhere that a woman should always look like a column, like maybe Jackie Kay said it. And so she really has this eye for fashion and this desire to own nice things, which gets her into a lot of debt. Her part-time job is working at this department store called Sabine's, which is owned by a Korean American who is the third wife of an old rich guy. And Casey's relationship with Sabine is kind of a mentor, but also someone that is a little bit stifling and suffocating, is really interesting. And it's also really interesting that she's Asian American as well, because there are a lot of themes in this novel, not overtly, but of course it comes through in terms of Casey trying to straddle these two worlds of a very conservative, religious, non-English speaking like her parents, and then everything that she's been exposed to as someone that went to Princeton is surrounded by all these waspy people and people that are upper middle class. It's also similar to The Bell Jar because it takes place in New York City. I feel like New York City is just such iconic place for young people to go to try and like make their way, and I do enjoy stories that are set in New York City for that reason. I also have a lot of friends that moved to New York City after college. I think it will kind of always play that role for a lot of Americans. But she's also like a hat maker. She attends hat making classes, and she just has all these like interesting quirks about her that I think Min Jin Lee did a really good job in including. For example, she doesn't really read new novels. She likes to read her favorite books over and over. So she's always rereading like Wuthering Heights or Middlemarch, and she's only 22 years at the start of this novel, so she's really young and she's really trying to figure things out. She has a college boyfriend who cheats on her, so then she decides to break up with him. Then he's a white guy. Then she later on starts dating another Korean American. There are some really interesting examples of different ways that Korean Americans have built community in New York City and in the US. The church community is really strong. Her close friend Ella Shim marries Ted, who is like not the greatest guy. And Casey and Ella, their friendship is really sweet because I feel like it starts out from a place of Casey not liking Ella because she thinks Ella's too goody two shoes and maybe judging Casey a bit, but then they become good friends throughout the years that are depicted in this novel. There's the relationship that Casey has with her sister. So I'm just painting a picture of kind of the different characters. Then I would say some of the key themes are really around the immigrant story, but more important than that, and that's why it's called Free Food for Millionaires, just like the role of money in capitalism. And I think Casey is trying to figure out whether she wants the traditional vision of success, because that is clearly make a lot of money, and everyone around her who is successful is striving to make money. But then also like the rich people in this book that do have a lot of money don't always, like they take it for granted. And it's a very like American excess type of thing. And then love, I would say, is another key theme, like the importance of love, finding your person. And I think the way that romantic love is depicted in this book is really sweet. I think it's nice to read Casey's experiences with love because she is attractive. She does like face, like she gets hit on at work. Back then it was so prevalent, or I don't know, I'm acting like it's set in the 50s. It's not set in the 50s, it's set in the 90s. But somehow this does have kind of like a feeling that's from even more in the past. I don't know, I guess I was born in the 90s, so it is pretty far off from what I'm used to. But yeah, it's like pre-internet, pre-email, definitely pre-smartphone. But there is kind of just like this very gritty feeling of how in New York City, everyone's just trying to get ahead. Everyone's just trying to like make it work. And so for women, one of the tools that they have towards that end is their sexuality and their beauty. And so that definitely is the case for Casey as well. And so she's navigating how to find a partner that she really wants versus other reasons to be in a relationship. Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. It was just really able to capture my attention. There are a lot of interesting themes about race, money, society in the United States, and I think I really like Min Jin Lee's prose. It's a lot more digestible, or maybe not more digestible. It's similar to the writing in Pachinko, but I think one of the things that after I reread Pachinko, I didn't like as much was just, it felt very dramatic, and Pachinko felt very sweeping, and you're following like multiple generations, and every character almost like holds this really heavy weight of what they represent. And I feel like the characters in Free Food for Millionaires, they're more everyday, they're more just doing their thing, and you're just along for the ride, which is a less pressure-filled reading experience. I don't know. It just was more enjoyable, even though it was longer, to kind of feel like I was living a day of Casey Hahn's life, and it wasn't all building up to some bigger sweeping grand statement. But I do think at the same time there are several themes of what Casey goes through that kind of anchor the novel. So that's good. And I do think Min Jin Lee does a great job of transporting you into that time and place. Obviously, I think it's close to what she experienced, maybe in law school and also from doing her research. But I really enjoyed feeling like I was in New York City while reading this. And my dear friend Marina lent me her copy of this book, and she suggested I read it on my trip to the US. So that's what I did. I was in the US for 2 weeks. And so it was really a good book to read while I was in the US, and I was in New York City for a little bit as well. And so that kind of paired nicely to like things I was experiencing and remembering about America, and also reading this book. So I do recommend it. I'm excited because Min Jin Lee has a third novel out this year. I think it's coming out at the end of the year. And I think I'm going to read it with my friend Lauren Kay, if she still remembers. And so I'll definitely keep you guys updated. I almost recommend this more than Pachinko at this point. I mean, obviously, everyone should read Pachinko. It's a great novel. But this one is just kind of, it's different. And I just find it really vulnerable and sweet and like more slice of life, a little bit less. Definitely dramatic things happen in the book, but they're very like everyday things that we all grapple with. And it is more focused on one particular character and this tight cast, rather than Pachinko is still an ensemble cast. But sometimes I feel like, especially towards the last third of Pachinko, the characters are almost like too heavily defined by their past. I don't know. These are just kind of some random thoughts about Pachinko that I'm throwing in here as well. But if you watch this video, thanks so much for sticking around, and I will catch you in the next one.